The plight of veterans has always been a serious concern in the city of New Bedford. One of the leaders in that effort is the Veterans Transition House on Willis Street in the city. For many years, VTH has provided transitional housing to veterans in Greater New Bedford, along with a pathway, if you will, to programs to help them either find a job or get drug treatment or other types of help. Now VTH will soon be involved in another program, permanent supportive housing. That's thanks to a state grant that was approved recently by Governor Baker. My guests are Jim Reid, the executive director of VTH, and Jason Stripinis, the business manager of the Veterans Transition House. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Good. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. The grant totals nearly $8 million. It's a lot of money. How will it be spent? I guess both of you can tackle that to some degree. Jim, let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah. So what we're planning to do is have the present building at 20 Willis Street is going to be taken down. That old building, it's built in the 1900s, so it was served as the Union Hospital. Mm-hmm. A lot of people that there, some of the board members, they've had either family members there or they were in the hospital, and some of them even been born in the hospital. So that's going to be taken down, and 2 new units of permanent supportive housing for veterans is going to be put in place. 2 separate buildings on that slope there, mm-hmm. And so we're looking forward to that. And we've permanent supportive housing is a big piece of helping out veterans today. It's basically the culmination of where that's the goal of all vets that are homeless or find themselves in a homeless situation. That's the goal that they want to reach, is to get into permanent supportive housing. We're already doing permanent supportive housing. We already have 9 units. We've had 9 units in our other properties throughout the city for the past 3 to 5 years or so now.
And so this is going to be a little different than what you're doing now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Maybe Jason, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, well, actually, thanks, Jim. I've been doing permanent supportive housing on a small scale for a few years now. We started off with, I think, 2 apartments. Mm-hmm. We've now got 9 in 4 of our satellite properties. So we've already been doing some of this work. This is going to magnify it and provide a little bit of the financing to do it on a lot of the financing to do it on a much bigger scale.
I mean, it's nearly $8 million. Will most of that go for construction, or will some be part of an expansion of your services?
No, well, the nearly $8 million, all of that is for the construction, the total project for these 30 units. Hard costs, not to get too into the weeds with the boring stuff, but about $5 million, a little shy of $5 million is the actual hard costs, the concrete, the labor that goes into that. And there's a lot of other associated costs, not just financing, architectural, planning, zoning, acquisition of property, things that go into that.
Jim Reid, is there but there will be an expansion of services, so to speak, from what you do now.
Correct, yeah. So the VTH is not going away with what we currently do. So a lot of moving balls we're juggling right now. That's going through. So we've got other projects that are going on. There's a house or a building that we've had for several years on Purchase Street, which is going to be our new outreach center for veterans. And so our expansion, so to speak, is that we're going to outreach to all veterans in the South Coast area. So not just our clients, not just our veteran clients. It'll be them too, but also any veteran that, hey, where can I get this information, or so where can I get this kind of help? They can come into the front door on that Purchase Street building and get some help from us, and we can direct them and refer them to the services that they may need. And that's what we want to do. Not just a housing piece, because the housing piece we're hitting permanent supportive housing, and also the transitional housing. That's not going to go away. We're still going to maintain transitional housing in another building that we're working with the Whale Foundation that we're working with on another building.
So you're working with Whale to acquire properties. Is that part of this project?
Nope. It's not part of the project we're talking about here. It's a separate project that's on the same block in another building. So we've got 3 projects that are going on: the Outreach Center, the Whale project that we're working with the Whale Foundation, and the 20 Willis Street apartments.
All right. So this is, I would say it's a substantial expansion what you're doing. It's going to mean, will it mean hiring more people, for instance?
Correct.
Or bringing in more staff?
Yeah. We're looking at that right now. We just had a meeting prior to this meeting about expanding staff for our grant and per diem programs that we have. That's with the VA. That's VA funded. And so that program is going to have a slight change to it, and that will require some staffing. And so we are looking at that, and we're just talking about that this morning.
Getting $8 million from any government agency is not easy, especially these days. Jason, how did that happen? What's that process like? I bet it was a long one.
It has been a long one, and first, just a little bit. Again, I'm leery of getting too into the weeds, but just so your taxpayers that are part of the audience know, only about 40% of that is actual money that's coming from the state, the Commonwealth. Over 60% of this program and all of these kind of affordable housing since the 80s is funded by tax credits. So really, it's private equity that this brings in that allows that. So it's that the $8 million number is deceptive in terms of how much of that's coming out of taxpayers' coffers.
All right, very good. Yeah. But how do you? Let's talk about that. Even that
the process.
40%,
okay, yeah.
The process. So how difficult was that?
They call it a one-stop process, but that one stop leads to hundreds of pages of documents that have to be submitted. And this is actually our second rodeo, just getting approved on this process. When I was hired 3 years ago, we were in the midst, and I believe Jim told me during my interview that we're just working out the fine details. Well, the fine details are just getting ironed out more than 3 years down the road. So yes, it's quite a lengthy process. And there were over 100 initial applicants for this affordable housing round, of which 50 were ultimately selected.
Jim, what's the benefit of permanent support?
I'm sorry, 25. Forgive me. 25 were finally selected out of that 100 initial applicants.
Jim, what's the benefit of permanent supportive housing versus what VTH was doing and will continue to do?
Yeah.
What is the benefit of permanent supportive housing for people who might hear that term and not really understand it?
It stops the moving around, so in a way. It stops the folks from, going from a transitional program to another transitional program to another transitional program. That's happened quite a bit. I used to call it the 747, holding pattern, so to speak, and they'd take off from the VTH. Some of the guys would, if they got fed up with it or something like that, and they would go to another program. Permanent supportive housing is their own apartment. That's where they go, and that's where the MRP vouchers come in, Section 8 type vouchers for veterans. They'll come into play, and they'll have their own apartment. With that, it's a good thing. That's a great thing. It gives them pride. It gives them their own place. Usually they're new places.
And more responsibility.
But with that is the permanent supportive housing piece is that the VTH and our staff, our program folks that work hard, Sue and everybody, are out there making sure that the guys are doing okay. And, maybe just a knock on the door. It is an apartment, so it's not like a program house. It is an apartment. And so we will see them in the lobbies. One thing that we're doing in this house, this VTH house, or the new permanent supportive housing, is we're going to include a cafeteria and a full kitchen. So we will continue to feed our other folks that are in our other programs on that same block that we're going to be ended up pretty much, being on that whole block there in Purchase and Campbell Street.
You're listening to Townsquare Sunday. I'm Jim Phillips. My guests are Jim Reid and Jason Stripinis, and they're representing the Veterans Transition House in New Bedford. They've, at the opening stages, really, the opening steps of a new program to create permanent supportive housing for veterans at the Willis Street location, the present Willis Street location, which is a former hospital for many who remember that. It's coming down. It will come down when all is said and done. Okay. So obviously the work you do with veterans now will continue. You're going to expand your outreach and have an outreach center. How many? I hesitate to say that I really know a number because I really don't. I don't know how many homeless veterans there are in New Bedford or how many people who need help who are veterans at one time in their life. But this sounds like a pretty substantial upgrade. Is the need out there?
Yeah, definitely the need is for permanent supportive housing is there, because what's happening is we've noticed a drop in our census over the years for the transitional piece, and we're scratching our heads. Where did that happen? It's because permanent supportive housing is there, and people are getting housed, and veterans are getting housed, and they're being successful. The success rate's about 80% is what the numbers you'll get from the VA or wherever else you talk to about that, and that's good. But we're concerned that we're happy with the 80%, and that's what we want. But we're also concerned about that 20%, because 4 nice brand new walls and a new bathroom and a new kitchen doesn't mean anything if all the guy is doing in there and the gals are in there just staring at the walls. I mean, they've got to be engaged. They've got to stay busy. And try to work on those things, continue meetings if that's a requirement, if they're in any kind of recovery or anything like that, or just to have some support. And that's where we want to make this the way we do. We want to be the leader in this, because we really want to show the VA how supportive housing is working. And by having a cafeteria in there, that's a big piece of this, because that engages people to have to come down, to have a meal together. We can utilize that space for meetings, for community-type based meetings, for all positive things, and engage the clients and the veterans that are there. And so that's going to be one of the major differences between our house and other houses that are for veterans.
Have either one of you seen this model, if you will, work elsewhere?
Well, not locally and not in our immediate area.
Right.
The permanent housing portion, as Jim has laid out very well, has its efficacy and it works. The piece that's missing of permanent supportive housing is for the supportive part to be meaningful. And unfortunately, my job at the VTH is the money aspect of things. It takes money to have effects and to have programs. Generally is about $2,500 a year that's attached to one of these vouchers to make it quote-unquote supportive. I can tell you from 20 years in nonprofit that $2,500 does not provide you a lot in terms of staff or anything. Part of the reason we were selected, in fact, encouraged to apply for this round, is that we have services that can be leveraged. They love to use the term leverage. In other words, we've already got the people there. If we get this outreach center up and running the way we want it to, these folks are going to be able to drop in and participate in services that are already going on, so it doesn't create an additional need for a revenue stream beyond what we already have.
And we're pretty excited about it, because we want folks to come in and get some help, whether it be finances, getting their credit back on track, or maybe just finding out about what it's like. What do I do for a mortgage? So we can have the people come there. We intend to have a nice conference room in this building, and that we can have people come and speak to the vets in mass and say, hey, this is how you can fix your credit. This is how you can get a mortgage. This is how you can buy a car without getting ripped off. All those kinds of cool things,
When do you expect to start construction?
On or about February 1st.
All right.
Yeah.
Completion date?
I'm sorry.
It was May.
Real estate closing would be on or about February 1st. I
Springtime
look at everything
year.
through the lens of the green eye shades and the money, but spring, yeah.
What time do you think the project will be completed?
They were saying 9 to 12 months. I would think.
All right.
So spring 2019.
Yeah,
we
thereabouts.
hope.
Yeah.
Another announcement to be made: the Veteran of the Year, as chosen by the Veterans Transition House. You do this every year. You have a dinner to celebrate the selection. Who was this year's choice?
So this year is
I'll give you that. Sure.
Yep, Chris Gomes. I knew it was Chris Gomes. I just wanted to. I had this in front of me before, and so it's a board event. The board selects the Vet of the Year, and this year we had I think we had like 5 or 6 nominees come in, and then they had Chris, and they came about to select Chris. And it looks like it's going to be a great event. Again, it's going to be at White's of Westport this year on Veterans Day on November 9th, I believe it is.
And where can people get tickets?
We can get tickets through the vets, through us. You can call Alice at 508-992-5313, extension 11 or extension 10.
All right. Veterans of the Year. The Veteran of the Year, Chris Gomes, who is the Veterans Agent for the city of New Bedford, and certainly fought in Iraq and made a personal sacrifice and is still very active in the community, still doing what he does to help other veterans. And congratulations to Chris, and congratulations to the Veterans Transition House for all the work you guys are doing.
Great.
Kind of looking forward, trying to meet a community need. That's a terrific thing. I hope it all works out for you. I really do.
We think it will, Jim.
All right.
Appreciate it.